today we will be tackling the topic on selfhood in the area of psychology, in which dira gyud siya na belong, no? Selfhood and identity are topics under the area of psychology. Sakop siya ana nga umbrella, no? Although in the previous nga mga discussions, we've had philosophy and we've had sociology, and uh, all of which are applicable, no, but nothing beats, no, the insight of this field, no, psychology sa ato ang butanta sa development sa atong self. Okay, so on the first theorist nga itong i-discuss would be si Erikson, no? Or in his full name would be Eric Hamburger Erikson. Now, I know you have been through this topic sa inyong senior high or any butanta related field, no? But we will discuss Erikson in light of selfhood, Silvi, in light of the development of the self across lifespan nga mga stages of development. Okay, so Erikson's theory of lifespan development proposes 8 psychosocial stages of development. Psychosocial, meaning the development of the person has 2 facets, psychological and social. Now, with the social nga environment comes also, or rather, ang social nga environment has an effect on the psychological nga development sa person, and ang iyahang psychological development also in turn has an effect on his or her social nga butanta development. So kuha na siya, muna siya itawag as psychosocial. Okay, so from infancy through old age, no, in his view, the first 4 stages, timana na to, we will be viewing these stages later. Timana na to that the first 4 takes place in childhood and the last 4 in adolescence and adulthood. Each stage represent a developmental task. So naay task, naay ginatawag nga ay hurdle nga dapat i-negotiate sa isa ka person towards the completion of that putanta stage, no? And then if kani nga mga tasks, ang tawagan ni would be crisis nga naman, because naay gitawag nga options, no? Or rather really options but outcomes, two opposing possible outcomes in relation to this crisis, no? So if naay crisis nga atubangon that dapat i-negotiate sa person, no, unconsciously, because this is still Freudian nga under Freudian nga umbrella, it's that unconsciously we will negotiate with this, no, and the outcome would be naay duha ka possible nga outcome, no, which the first would be greater personal competence, and the next outcome, the alternative outcome, would be greater weakness and vulnerability. You will be more vulnerable if mo na siya ang outcome, no? And the other, of course, you will be more strong, no, and competent, and you would have a healthier, less pathological, and well-adjusted nga development, no? So of course, no, if only we had that choice, no, mo na gid nga I would choose the first outcome, because di ba, competence, nobody wants to be weak, nobody wants to be branded as incompetent, right? But here we are, according ang Erikson, we will face these 2 butanta opposing crisis, butanta balik-balik in each stage atong life, no? So the more successfully people resolve the issues at each stage, the more competent they are likely to become. So it's too simplistic, I know, no, that the more successful ka mo resolve sa issues, but then again, the issues are not that simple lang pud good. The issues here are very complicated. It's too complicated to butanta to just saying of course you would choose the other one, but the thing is complicated ang each crisis nga ato ang atubangon with each stage. I know that you have a background on this, so ato ni siyang atuan. So here are Erikson's developmental ng mga stages, no? The first would be trust versus mistrust. Okay, so if we outline nato na dira, sorry guys. So the first is trust versus mistrust. Second would be autonomy versus shame and doubt under toddlerhood. And we have early childhood, which is industry versus inferiority. Middle and late infancy, trust versus mistrust. Toddlerhood, autonomy versus shame. Early childhood, initiative versus guilt. Middle and late childhood, we have industry versus inferiority. Adolescence would be, we have identity versus identity confusion. Early adulthood, we have intimacy versus isolation. And we have middle adulthood, generativity versus stagnation. And lastly would be, we have late adulthood, this is old age, we have integrity versus despair. Okay, so balikan na to. So first stage dira according kang Erikson is that the first four mahitabo siya sa childhood. We have infancy, toddlerhood, early childhood, and then middle and late. So these four stages actually nahitabo siya sa childhood. And the sad thing with that is that because it happened in childhood, wala tay control over it. Most likely ang control over this crisis that we will be facing would be our significant others. That would be our primary caregivers, no? If of course under normal circumstances we have the mother and the father, no? Or on special cases we have tito, tita, lolo, lola, and so on and so forth, right? So that's sa ilaha fall ang weight sa burden, no, on this crisis. But lagi sa ilaha fall ang weight, but kita as children kita mo bear sa consequence sa ilahang upbringing, okay, or the way they handled those crises for us. Infancy, trust versus mistrust. Ang mabuild during infancy, duha ka buok ang crisis, or rather duha ka buok ang alternative ng mga choices. It's either to build trust or to build mistrust. So imagine an infant, no? Ang infant is wala siya means to survive on his own, right? If gutomon siya, muhilak. If giigang siya, muhilak. If gitugnaw siya, again, muhilak siya. If sobraan na po siya busog, muhilak po na siya. No? So, anything nga gusto niya ipaabot sa kalibutan or sa iyang immediate nga environment, of course, hilak because he doesn't know how to communicate with others, right? And so, every time muhilak ang bata, ang primary caregiver, basically under normal circumstances, of course iyang i-meet ang need sa bata. And so during that process nga, every time the baby needs something and then ihatag sa mama or sa papa, so na-trust ma-build between the parents and the child. So that trust is not only from the child towards the parents, but also from the parents towards the child. What do I mean by this? Ang bata, every time muhilak siya, naay assumption on his mind or her mind nga there would be somebody nga mo take care of my needs, right? So that's the thing with the trust from the bata towards the caregiver. But towards from the caregiver towards the bata, naapod the feeling of trust and confidence sa feeling sa caregiver nga ma-meet niya ang needs sa bata. Gets na to? And so that's why in many cases pod ang mga kuan siya observable labi na sa mga mama wherein kabalo sila sa hinilakan sa ilahang anak, whether kani nga hinilakan naglangi lang or naagi need or nahadlok or gigutom or in pain, they know the difference between the pitch, or I don't know how they discriminate those cries, but kabalo sila. And so that's part of the trust building process, and that the mother or the primary caregiver knows, or rather is confident nga ma-meet niya ang needs sa bata. And because sige niya butanta iyang gi-prioritize ang needs, what happens is that the baby knows that he is a priority, and the mother knows that kabalo siya unsaon pag-meet whatever it is nga needs sa baby. Okay, so na trust. So how about mistrust? So this happens when our parents or rather some parents dili ganahan mo take care sa bata, right? And so for example, a baby would assume that somebody is there to help. Okay, nakalibang siya sa iyang diaper, for example, and it's very uncomfortable sa bata, and it would cause rashes and so on and so forth. Okay, so maghilaka ang bata because it's uncomfortable. Di siya makatulog, basa iyang diaper, and so on and so forth. Maghilak siya, and then walay mo dool, nobody would take care of the child, and so what would happen is that there would be mistrust built tira sa mind sa bata. That dili nobody is there, to take care of his or her needs, and the result of that would be hopelessness, so although dili ni siya ma-articulate sa bata, and maybe this is not empirical enough to prove, but we could assume with great confidence that if inana ang state wherein walay nag-take care sa bata, there would be a level of mistrust dira sa bata towards other people, that ako aging parents dili maka take care na ako, how much more other people, di ba? And so what would happen is that maybe we could assume that this person would grow up to be a person who thinks only of himself or herself, because grabe ang mistrust, the basic level of trust must be built between the caretaker and the child, and the problem with that is if wala gi-take care sa primary caregiver ang needs sa bata, then mistrust would ensue, so on the next stage would be toddlerhood. So toddlerhood, at this stage ang bata ga-toddle na, meaning kabalo siya mo use sa iyang feet, to walk or to crawl, most likely to walk, and so at this stage ang bata mo explore na sa iyang environment, and so we have infancy, of course gahigda pa kadira, and then it follows nga if ang parents nato took care of us, took care of our needs, so trust ang mo follow ana would be the next nga crisis, autonomy versus shame and doubt. Now it's related, since trust built between the child and the parent during the time nga toddlerhood, nga ang bata mo explore na sa iyang surroundings, na trust ang bata towards trust nga na laid out nga foundation from the bata towards the parents, and so it leads to autonomy. What is autonomy? Independence, freedom to explore at a certain degree, right? And so as toddlers, they will explore their immediate nga surroundings, and the parents are there trusting nga ang bata dili maunsa, because they are there, they are confident that kabalo sila how to take care of the child, and the child also knows nga I can explore this area safely because na akong parents, so naay autonomy, and so the child would be partly autonomous, maglakaw-lakaw siya dira, would explore things, would explore the area, would explore butanta stuff around him or her, muning nga time nga ginakuan pa, partly gina-try pa nila kaon ang mga butang-butang ilang makitaan around, so naay autonomy sa butanta sa side sa bata, naay freedom, and at some point na po yung autonomy nga ginahatag sa side sa parents, because di nakasigi og tan-aw, sige og kabalaka sa imong child. And then the next nga crisis would be shame and doubt. So sa shame and doubt would be if na mistrust between the child and the parents, so na shame and doubt pag-abot sa toddlerhood. Unsa ning shame and doubt? Shame and doubt, doubtful siya sa iyang capabilities. Imagine toddlerhood ka. Imagine at the age of being a toddler, 1.5 to 3 years, for example. Toddlerhood. You discovered nga pwede din mo gamiton nimong tiil, no? Although it sounds silly para sa mature nga mind, but while bata ka, you discovered nga you can stand on your own feet. Sige. That. Now, if na autonomy, of course, i-capitalize na sa parents nga, sige, play around, no, ipaliko ng tuhod, matud pa. So, that's autonomy. On the other hand, if na mistrust built between the caretaker and the child, ang may tabo would be dili i-permit sa caretaker nga mo explore ang bata because sa iyang mistrust sa iyang self, di siya confident as to how to take care of the child, di siya confident nga mabantayan niya tarong, and so on and so forth, right? Also, this mistrust would lead to mistrust sa bata sa iyang self, that would lead to shame and doubt, that the child would be doubtful nga kaya niya ni, and so the child would be doubtful nga kaya ba niya lakon from this distance towards that, kaya ba niya i-grab ni nga mga things, no? And so we would be left with a toddler who is doubtful sa iyahang kaugalingon, whereas other toddler naglakaw-lakaw na, nagdagandagan na, has been socializing around with other toddlers. Siya as a child kay doubtful siya sa iyang kaugalingon, mahadlok siya mo explore outside, mahadlok siya makipag-socialize with other toddlers, mahadlok siya mo duolog other people because doubtful siya sa iyang own capabilities to walk, to mingle, no, to explore the areas around him or her. Next would be early childhood, ages 3 to 5, no, skwela na kaani, no. We have initiative versus guilt. Again, it's all connected. Trust, autonomy, and then what follows would be initiative. What is initiative? Initiative would be a sense of responsibility. At early childhood class, nanamoy dapat ideally nanamoy sense of responsibility, especially with yourself, no? At age 3 to 5 dapat kablo na ka mo limpyo sa imong mo fix sa imong own bed when you get up in the morning, right? 3 to 5 isira kay na. Ang uban 3 to 5 nga mga ages gina-train na sa ilang parents mag-cook, right? Mag-cut vegetable with kanang plastic ng mga knives and so on and so forth, right? Na ay gitawag nga a degree of responsibility para sa iyang kaugalingon, not only sa iyang kaugalingon but also sa iyang immediate nga surrounding. Manilhig na siya, manlimpyo, kung gubot iyang things iyahang hipuson, and so on and so forth, right? So na initiative, asa nigikan nga initiative sa autonomy. If na kay autonomy to explore, na kay autonomy to play those toys, to play with those toys, sa pag-abot nimo early childhood, while you're playing with your toys and di na ka magdula, na ay sense of responsibility to fix and to butanta ihipuso nimo imong toys. So that's a sense of initiative. So at this age, of course, gaskwila na pug ka, na initiative on your part that imuhang butanta tasks. Although i-guide kasi mo parents, imuhang task, imuhang cargo. That means if gitagaan ka assignment, for example, color the giraffe, for example, kana a coloring book. What happens would be in a certain degree of freedom, or rather a certain degree of responsibility para sa imong kaugalingon, ikaw mismo ang buhatan ng mga task, ikaw buhatan ng assignment, dili ang parents. And then if ang parents mo buhatan na, then, or rather if wala kay initiative, if wala kay sense of responsibility towards others and especially for yourself, na gitawag nga sense of guilt na sa bata, because I could not even take care of myself. Si mama tanan, hasta ang paghimo sa assignment si mama, no? Ang pag-answer sa module si mama, no? Daghang kita makita na ron, si mama tanan, no? Wherein si mama unta ang facilitator, magpapa unta ang facilitator, ang nahitabo sila na taga-grado kay sila na ga-answer sa tibuok module, no? So na ay sense of guilt. It's not a thing, haya-haya sa bata. It's actually damaging sa bata because dili siya, wala siya butanta, wala siya part sa iyang learning, wala siya part sa responsibility unta niya para sa iyang kagalingon, no? Even ang pag-arrange sa iyang bag, si mama patanan. Asa imong crayons, si mama patanan. Ang pagtayog shoes, si mama magpapa pa, right? So naay gitawag nga bata nga we can actually give a vivid picture ani nga type nga bata, no, nga very dependent, no? Although naamang yung level of dependency ang bata get towards the parents because bata lagi ka, but then again naapoy dapat level of responsibility towards sa iyang kaugalingon because di ba you're training a child to be a functional part sa society, no? A functional nga human being. Imagine ka na nga bata mo dako na as an adult nga si mama gyapon tanan, no? Imagine that, no? And I do not mean to shame those people, but napatay college students nga ang mangayo sa grado si mama pa, no? Kana pod, no? As college students, no, ang responsible sa atong grades is kita mo, no? Kana ba, no? Kita na dapat ang bahala sa atong kaugalingon, no? Aham na siya garut nanan sa diri sa childhood. And then we have middle and late childhood. At this stage, no, 6 years to puberty, daghanay late oy, no? 6 years to puberty, we have industry versus inferiority. So you have trust, right? And because of the trust, you have freedom. Because of those freedom, you have a certain sense of responsibility towards yourself. Naka-initiative to do the things that you have to do for yourself and for others, right? Which leads to industry. Unsa ning industry? 6 years old to puberty. At this stage, ang bata actually mo bloom na ang iyang interests. Asa siya ganahan? Unsay gusto niya buhaton? Is he interested in music, in performing, in painting? No, daghan ay manggawas nga mga gitawag ni siya og possibilities, right? No. Sakto ba? Possibilities, no? Yes, promises, no? Promising nga mga possibilities para sa bata, no? Nga hilig siya ani, hilig siya ana, no? And at this stage pod, manggawas na ang mga needs sa bata, ang mga unsa nga mga parts, unsa nga aspects sa development ang kinahanglan og butanta og assistance, right? And so at this stage, if ang bata has the trust of the parents, na build autonomy, freedom, initiative, responsibility, industry would be the child would know how to do things on his or her own, no? The child would know how to do things nga siya lang, no, with lesser nga supervision sa or rather lesser nga help na sa parents because kabalo na siya on his part, no, nga mo ni siya dapat niyang buhaton. And so at this stage actually ma-nurture na ang ilang gifts, ang ilang talents, no? So dira gasulod ang industry. Industry would be having to know your strengths and weaknesses, no? Even kanang pinaka-shallow lang nga level of knowing it nga, okay, maayo ko mo kanta, at least maayo ko mo kanta, or rather if dili ka maayog tingog, at least you know nga dili ka maulawon nga bata, and if maulawon ni siya nga bata, at least the child would know nga mas maayo kog arts, or maayo ko mag-write og poems or stories and so on and so forth, right? So we have that, no? So that's the healthy, no? The pathological nga alternative would be inferiority. So here's the thing, the child would feel inferior at this stage. Feeling niya inferior na siya nga naman because at first walay trust na built between sa iyaha and sa parents, and maybe that trust will develop later on. Nanay gitawag nga shame and doubt mo develop sa bata, doubt sa iyang kaugalingon, and so with that doubt comes the guilt that dili niya kaya buhaton sa iyang di niya kaya buhaton ng mga things that should have been done by him. And now gitawag nga inferiority. Inferior na ang bata if i-compare na niya yung kaugalingon towards others of the same age or the same bracket sa development. Nga naman, because at this stage, ang mga bata, as I've said, bloom na. They would most likely look for those butanta areas where they are strong. Okay, dito nila i-plant ilang foundation. Ano man na, no? And so, at this stage, ang bata nga inferior would look at other children and see for themselves nga, uy, nganong sila ga apil-apil naman ani. Ako lagi nara ko diri, no? Abog ra ko sa earth, no? So, feeling inferior because in the first or in the early nga parts sa development, wala kay freedom to explore these possibilities. And so, kung wala kay freedom, you feel doubtful kay sa imong kaugalingon. Toddlerhood ha, doubtful nang ka sa imuhang capabilities nga mo walk or mo mingle, right? Guilty na ka because sa ages 3 to 5, guilt, you feel heavy guilt because wala kay responsibility for yourself. How could you discover your own gifts if ikaw mismo wala nimo na na-explore early on, right? So, that's the first 4 nga stages. Now, you could say nga, pwede ba ko magbalhin-balhin from trust, shame and doubt, initiative, inferiority? Pwede ba magbalhin-balhin ng alternatives? And the answer is, according kang Erikson, would be no. Once nga trust, it follows down. Once nga mistrust, it follows down towards inferiority. Medyo unfair, no? But for me, no, in butanta, if you put this in a realistic setting, I think pwede ta mo balhin or pwede ta mo choose o better alternative. That is if atong parents or atong primary caregivers would also help us do it, no? Because sila mag-bear sa burden mo. Sila ga-bear sa weight, no? Kita lang ang mudawat sa consequence. Mo pinaka-unfair aning first 4, no? Next would be adolescence. 10 to 20 years, medyo dako-dako na siya nga gap, no? And much would have changed, no? Many of you under adolescence, identity versus identity confusion. And so, it follows gyapon, still, kaya dako naman mo aning apart, kamo na ang gagunit sa will, di na yung parents. Okay? And so, with industry, balik ko na to, you have found your gifts, your talents, where you're good at ng mga aspects sa butanta academics baka ha, or sa sports, no? And so, makita na din nimo imuhang identity, imong selfhood, no? Butanta pahapyaw nga level, but makita na nimo imuhang kaugalingon, who you are, who you could possibly be kana at this stage. Who could you possibly be? At this stage po, nakasulod na ka og college, di ba? Imagine that 20 years old, no? College, pwede, no? So, at this stage, identity. Kita nimo imong identity. You know who you are, you know the values that you hold, the beliefs that you could take with you, no? The belief system that you could take with you. Ligon nga belief system, ligon nga value system, you know who you are, kabalo ka sa lugar imong kaugalingon, kabalo ka unsa imong goal, bahalag butanta in a low resolution nga level, kabalo ka what do you want to be when you grow up, no? Nay gamay nga idea. That's identity, and that's a very healthy nga development. The next would be identity confusion. Many would have said nga about ni siya sa bayot-bayot, but it goes more than that, no? Or about ni siya sa homosexuality. But identity confusion goes deeper than that. Identity confusion would be kay wala man, you feel inferior with yourself. Imagine sa middle and late childhood, you feel inferior with yourself, and so pag-abot nimo aning stage, you're still in the dark kung kinsa jud ka, kung unsa jud ka, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are your skills and talents and gifts. Wala pa kabalo. So you are still inferior, and at this stage you're still you're still in the dark kung kinsa jud ka, and so you're still confused. The thing with nakanindot with identity is that you have established for your own a foundation for yourself, no? A foundation for your selfhood, silbi, for later for later years to come. Sa identity confusion, nagkapa-kapa pa ka kung kinsa jud ka, no? And so unsay kuan ani, unsay consequence ani is that at this stage wala pa kay lasim ko gulingon, so wala pa kay steady nga value system, and so you're still trying out things, no? You're still confused as to who you really are. You're still confused as to what do you want to become. And so isa sa mga consequence ani would be wala pa kabalo unsay kuan nimo sa college, no? Wala kabalo nga nung nagkuha ka og nursing, no? Basig sabay lang sa barkada. So that's part of the confusion, no? Because at some point nisulod ka og portanta nursing ka or HRM, at some point nag-assume na ka nga you will graduate in that course and you will have a job butanta related to that course, no? So but then with identity confusion, you will try out so many things in your life, and then without even the vision nga mahuman, without even the vision butanta nga kana imong trabaho or that calling would give you your passion, no? So appeal sa identity confusion would be the inability to find your own passion, since wala man nimo nakitaan sa middle and late childhood the passion for arts, the passion for music, the passion for teaching, for serving others. So wala nimo nakita ng passion, you're inferior, and so with that stage you're still confused as to unsa pud imong passion, what are you passionate about, and asa nimo ibubo ang imong kaugalingon kana pud, no? So find yourself first, no? So identity, and then we have early adulthood, 20s to 30s, intimacy versus isolation. So diri na mo sulod ang inyong topic sa gugma-gugma. Nga naman because sa early adulthood, if you have found your identity, then di ba nakaila ka kinsa ka, unsay values nga imong ginagunitan. Actually at this point nanapog kay ideas as to unsay ganahan ni mga tao, right? Not only sa uyab-uyab nga aspect, but also kinsay ganahan ni mga friends, right? And so you're willing to open yourself up to them because you know who you are, you know where you stand, and you have this most likely stable value system including yourself, no? So that's intimacy. You're willing to be intimate, you're willing to be to be open to others, and you're willing to be vulnerable for others. That's intimacy. So you open yourself up to others, and you can only open yourself up to others if you have the identity. Next is, or the alternative would be isolation. You will isolate your feelings from others, because here's the thing, wala pa kay identity, no? So wala kay identity sa adolescence, pagabot sa early adulthood wala pa kaila kinsa ka, so most likely you would be afraid to open up yourself to others, and so you isolate your feelings, you isolate your real self from other people, kay lagi wala pa kay lasim ko galingon. Unsay consequence ani? According sa research is that ang consequence sa isolation would be promiscuity, no? Kung sa Bisaya pa, kiat-kiat, no? Kiatan, no? Not only sa aspect sa babae but also sa aspect sa lalaki. Kaya nga naman before ta mo proceed, let me clarify nga according kang Erikson, if tanaw nimo ng adolescence and early adulthood, is that before ka mag-uyab-uyab, no, sa intimacy versus isolation, before ka mag-uyab-uyab, you must first find yourself, because it's the only real currency nga ihatag nimo sa isa ka relationship, no? One thing nga imong mahatag sa the one real thing nga mahatag nimo sa relationship, sa isa ka relationship, would be yourself. And so you have to find your identity first before ka mag-uyab-uyab, no? Nag-uyab-uyab ka, wapag kay nanapag ka sa identity confusion mo, nang saway sa mga gauna sa ato sa mga mag-uyab-uyab, dili pag kabalo mo laba, no? Di pag kabalo mo luto. But the truth of the core nga message is that wala pag kay identity, nangita na ka og other person to share that self with. And kana siya nga self, wala pa identity, what would happen is that you would become a clinging vine to the person nga nga imong uyab, no? And so you would become less of a person, mailhan na lang ka as uyab ni so and so, rather than having an identity for yourself. Mailhan na lang ka, uyab man na ni so and so, no? Rather than ay si kuan man na, right? So that's intimacy versus isolation. So sa isolation is that you are incapable of showing your real emotions to other people. That's why ang iyang consequence would be promiscuity. You will not have real butanta genuine relationship with people because lagi isolated imong emotions, and so you're left with nothing, no? You're left with nothing but what? But physical nga pleasure, because there's no emotional pleasure involved at all. So that's early adulthood. Complicated kayo ang ang utok sa tao, no? In middle adulthood, we have generativity versus stagnation. So generativity versus stagnation, at this point, 40s, 50s, you would have made a life for yourself, na nakay family, na nakay mga anak, and so on and so forth, right? So sa generativity is that 40s to 50s, no? Boring ng kinabuhi, no? We must face the fact, no? Boring ng kinabuhi. Unsa pa man akong buhaton, no? Na nakapundan akong balay, na human akong mga anak. Unsa pa man. Okay? What else can I do? Unsa pa man nga, 'di ba? Because when you're still young, daghan pa kayo og i-conquer nga mga terrain, right? Because you're still able, and daghan pa kay possibilities. Pwede pa ka mag-business and so on and so forth, right? Pwede pa ka mag-eskwela balik, second course, or no? But pag-abot nimo og middle adulthood, kalma na ang kinabuhi, no? Kalma na kay tanan. Most likely, most aspects in life stable na, and so dira na din mo sulod ang itawag nga choice between being able to do more things, that's generativity, or stagnation. Mo stagnate na lang ka dira, no? Dira na lang kataman, no? Wala na kailangan padulungan, no? So that's the thing, no? So generativity versus stagnation. The thing with this is that ang consequence of generativity would be you would be able to be more generous, to be more giving to others, no? Even give yourself to other people, no? To a larger cause. And stagnation, that's still butanta a pathological nga alternative, dira ra kataman, and wala na kay lain nga, wala na kay damgo silbi, dira ra kataman, ganahan ka dira ra kataman. Actually nobody likes that, no? But it's a choice sa adulthood, sa middle adulthood, no? Munang ma-relate na to sa ilahang quote nga life begins at 40 daw, because there is a 40-ish dira ang choice between generativity versus stagnation. Dira lang ba jud ka, or you would venture more, you would explore more terrain while buhi pa ka, no? So that's middle adulthood. And according sa data is that between generativity versus stagnation, mas makapangita pag generativity ang babae kaysa sa lalaki, no? There were cases nga middle-aged men daw mo seek for generativity kaysa wayon daw sa family kay lagi tigulang na kaayo, no? But when middle-aged women mag-seek og generativity, mas gina praise pa sa family. So inana, so naay butanta naay inequality between how we treat generativity versus middle-aged men and middle-aged nga women, wherein dapat unta equal, no? And lastly, integrity versus despair. This is late adulthood, 60s onwards according kang Erikson, and then pabalik na ang imuhang dili na pa forward ang imuhang vision but pabalik na. And then we have the choice of integrity, is that if you have lived your life well, and then you have maintained integrity and dignity for yourself. If you have lived your life in a manner nga pathological and grabe ka wasteful nga, grabe ka wasted life, then ang result would be despair. Looking back, if naakay mas daghan imuhang butanta imuhang pagbasol, and then that's what you have: despair, no, a wasted life, a life spent for nothing but butanta empty pleasure. Or you have integrity, wherein you could have a butanta a hard life, but it's a life well spent, spent for a purpose and meaning. And so you have integrity.